why the US defense plan is unbeatable. Super excited to get into this and check out more of the US military. Before we do get into this video, I appreciate if you guys can hit that subscribe button. And let's just straight to this and see what we got.
Could the U.S. fight off an invasion of its homeland?
Okay.
That question has been burning a hole in the brains of Americans since before the Cold War began in 1945, and continues to do so even today.
What do you think?
The United States military is currently one of the most well-equipped and advanced militaries on Earth.
Oh, for
but
sure.
Would they be able to defend the country from a highly sophisticated and all-out assault? The U.S. spent around $877 billion in 2022 on defense. So what?
Wait, just in 2022? 877 billion? Yo!
Sophisticated and all-out assault? The U.S. spent around $877 billion in 2022 on defense.
Wow.
So one would certainly hope that all those tax dollars are going to something useful.
Oh, 100%.
So what would a potential invasion of the mainland United States look like? What factors would influence the outcome, and how would the U.S. respond?
Oh, this is gonna
First
be good.
things first, has the U.S. ever actually been invaded? Let's look at a few examples and see what the results were. After successfully fending off the British during the American Revolution, the U.S. in the early 1800s was cruising. Everything was trending in the right direction, and the country was growing both physically and in a sense of national spirit.
Right.
It takes some gumption to pull off the deal of the century in the Louisiana Purchase. 530 million acres for $15 million.
Yo, imagine, bro. Imagine like someone else buying this for 15 million. Crazy.
Which is about $358 million today, is still a preposterous deal.
Okay,
there are ranches in Montana for sale today worth about half of that. So
yo, I actually just couldn't imagine like if US was just the size of this, bro, and another country was here, dude.
$358 million for half a continent is just insane.
Yeah, right.
Regardless, the brand new United States of America thought they were living in a relatively good era, having beaten the British and continuing to establish themselves on the world stage. The British, however, had other ideas in mind. They attacked U.S. trading ships and forced captured American sailors into service in the Royal Navy.
Hey, I thought the British got defeated, bro. What's going on? Why are we attacking? How are we attacking when we just lost?
The world stage. The British, however, had other ideas in mind. They attacked U.S. trading ships and forced captured American sailors into service in the Royal Navy. So the U.S. declared war on Great Britain to defend its honor. The war lasted from 1812 to 1815 and actually resulted in the British attacking, burning, and occupying Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. Hey, yo, listen. I'm just happy we're friends now, bro, because imagine this in nowadays. Yo, we would get smoked so easily, bro. You guys would smoke us so easily.
British troops burned a large portion of the city, including the White House and the Capitol building. President James Madison and his government had already been evacuated, but this defeat still brought great shame upon the young nation. This was the only time in U.S. history that a foreign army had occupied the nation's capital. Peace was eventually negotiated and no one really won the war, but the Americans would get the last laugh as Andrew Jackson and his force of backwoods farmers, pirates, frontiersmen, former slaves, and all-around ruffians defeated an experienced, tough, and numerically superior British force in about 30 minutes in the Battle of New Orleans.
In 30 minutes? I thought the British was meant to be strong back then. Okay, buddy. But yo, technically, Britain is the only country to invade America. We didn't do a great job, you know what I'm saying? Like, we got our ass handed to us, but, you know.
Frontiersmen, former slaves, and all-around ruffians defeated an experienced, tough, and numerically superior British force in about 30 minutes in the Battle of New Orleans. The next time that the United States was invaded occurred during the Mexican-American War.
Oh, okay, never mind. Britain isn't the only country to invade. Okay, and yo, this is a very interesting video, bro.
The event that actually triggered the war was when Mexican forces attacked U.S. soldiers patrolling the Rio Grande. The Mexican forces then invaded Brownsville, Texas, claiming they were taking back territory that rightfully belonged to Mexico.
Yo, look how small Texas is back then. Oh, it's tiny. It probably still as big as the UK, but still.
This event was known as the Thornton Affair and caused President Polk to declare war on Mexico. Although this invasion was incredibly brief, the war that came out of it saw U.S. troops conquer Mexico City and take control of parts of California, Texas, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and parts of Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Wyoming.
Bro, that's crazy. Yo, it's mind-blowing to me that no wonder when you guys talk about Mexican food, you're always talking about like Texas and California. Bro, it was Mexico. Like it was back then.
Mexico, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and parts of Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Wyoming as a result. The next major conflict to take place on American soil was the Civil War, but we'll pass on that one, given the U.S. was fighting itself. The next time the U.S. was under threat of foreign invasion came again from its southern border with Mexico. In 1915, as war ravaged Europe, the United States watched from afar. All the while, Mexico was undergoing its own revolution. The Mexican government under Venustiano Carranza had been secretly supporting raids by bandits across the southern border of the United States that were violent and chaotic. President Woodrow Wilson supported Carranza and his government as a way of making the raids stop, but unbeknownst to him, Carranza was the one supporting the raids in the first place.
Yo, dirty play, bro. Mr. Carranza. Can't be doing that, man. You can't be making like an alliance with Mr. Wilson. And then you're sending the raids yourself? Come on, bro.
So, as things got more complicated and the U.S. got more involved south of the border, a man named Pancho Villa took things into his own hands. Villa was outraged at the United States' support of Carranza and decided to launch raids of his own. These raids culminated in an attack on Columbus, New Mexico in 1916.
Oh, wow.
Villa led the attack himself, and the battles saw heavy fighting between Villa's forces and elements of the 13th Cavalry Regiment of the U.S. Army. Villa was eventually driven back into Mexico, but this incursion would trigger a U.S. invasion of Mexico to capture Villa. The U.S. defeated Villa's forces but failed to capture him. This would come to be known as the Pancho Villa Expedition, led by none other than John Blackjack Pershing, who would go on to greater fame in the latter years of World War I.
Yo, this is crazy, bro. This is really interesting. I didn't know any of this. Didn't know any of this war between Mexico and America.
Mexico would again be caught up in a possible invasion when the Germans in World War I tried to get Mexico to launch a large-scale invasion of the southern U.S. if America entered the war against Germany.
Oh, really?
In return, they were promised some of their former territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The Mexican government turned them down, but this communication got leaked and actually became one of the key justifications for the U.S. joining the war. These examples have mostly been isolated incidents, not full.
Yo, wait, hold on. I gotta stop it right here. Imagine this didn't happen and America, the US didn't join the war. Bro, things could be so different in Europe. Because US are a key part to why we won the war against Germany. Wow.
One of the key justifications for the US joining the war. These examples have mostly been isolated incidents, not full-scale invasions with the aim of conquering and controlling the US, although some could argue that the British came the closest. In World War II, the world was again at war, and yet again the US tried not to get directly involved. That all changed on December 7, 1941, when sea and air forces from Imperial Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, as well as coordinated strikes on other U.S. forces around the Pacific right after.
Wait, hold on. So you're telling me at this point, America aren't involved in World War II, but Japan forcefully made America join World War II? And then we all know what happened afterwards. Bro, what a silly mistake, man. What a silly mistake. They might be able to handle it if America wasn't involved. Yo. What a silly mistake.
As devastating as this attack was, it did not constitute an invasion, as the Japanese forces did not seek to conquer Hawaii, only inflict as much damage to U.S. forces as they could. However, this attack was the most coordinated, sophisticated, and lethal attack on U.S. soil to date, and served as the springboard for the U.S. joining World War II. The Japanese did not stop there, however, and actually invaded the Aleutian islands of Attu and Kiska. Although Alaska was not a state at the time, it was still a territory of the US and thus an invasion. Japanese forces occupied these two islands in June of 1942 and held them until August of 1943. It was the first time since the War of 1812 that a foreign army had truly invaded American soil, and the American public was furious.
Wow.
There was also rampant fear that the Japanese would launch an amphibious invasion of the west coast of the US, primarily in California. These fears were mostly unfounded, as the Japanese did not have the manpower or resources to do this. So, in response, the US and Canadian militaries launched attacks on the islands to reclaim—
Wait, hold on. I'm a bit confused. Empire Japan? Did Japan occupy this area here? Oh, wow. Oh, interesting. I wonder what happened with this part. How did they lose that?
So, in response, the US and Canadian militaries launched attacks on the islands to reclaim them. The only real fighting occurred on Attu, as the Japanese had secretly withdrawn their forces from Kiska before the Allied attack. Attu was a bloody affair, as Japanese and Allied soldiers fought for every inch of ground in horrendous weather. With their backs to the sea, the Japanese commander Yasuyo Yamasaki ordered a banzai charge with all of his remaining men. The charge caught the Allies by surprise and broke through to their rear echelon units. The Americans and Canadians recovered and through brutal hand-to-hand combat killed all but 28 of the Japanese soldiers on the island.
Oh, wow,
With the Allies reclaiming the Aleutian Islands, they began turning up the heat on the Japanese Empire, and we all know how that one ended.
Oh, we're talking about the big bombs. Yeah, that was crazy, bro. That was like America putting their foot down. They was like, yo, who are you playing with? You know what I'm saying? They're saying, you really think you could do that? Who are you playing with, really?
On the other side of the map, and allied with the Japanese, you have Nazi Germany, whose insatiable conquests of Europe terrified the entire world. The American public thought that once Hitler finished off conquering the Old World, he would turn his sights toward the New World.
Right.
Hitler did not believe the Americans were a formidable enemy, and even went as far to say that they had no real fighting strength because they had no racial purity. I'm sure he lived to regret that one when the Tuskegee Airmen began shooting down his vaunted Luftwaffe in droves. So,
yeah, I ain't gonna lie, bro. He ate his words. He ate his words.
So while Hitler may have not thought of the Americans as a threat, he still wanted to conquer as much of the world as he could. His ambitions were mostly in his head, however, as no concrete plans for an invasion of America ever came to fruition.
Right.
The German High Command recognized that an invasion of this scale was beyond their abilities and resources at the time. After World War II and into the Cold War, many Americans became paranoid about a Soviet invasion of the US. Thankfully, nothing ever materialized. That brings us to the present, where the world again finds itself in a dangerous situation. East and West are still at odds, always with weapons at the ready. If a foreign power, perhaps China or Russia, decided to launch a bold invasion of the US homeland, it would have to be highly sophisticated, coordinated, and move at terrifying speed. That is the only way it would work, requiring all the pieces to move in perfect synchronicity with each other.
This is putting me on
But in
edge.
war, things hardly ever go according to plan. So what would a potential invasion look like? That is the question the generals in the Pentagon wrestle with, and even they can't say with absolute certainty how things would go down. Still, the consensus is that it would come in the form of a combined arms assault, with the bulk of the invasion being an amphibious landing.
Okay.
Given the US's air and sea power, the enemies would need to maintain control of the battlefield to even have a prayer of this going well. A relevant example can be seen in the invasion of Normandy, where the Allies were able to secure air and naval superiority, giving them the upper hand they needed to push the Germans back. Additionally, in the Pacific theater of World War II, all of the American island campaigns were amphibious landings. These landings would have likely been massacres if not for the supremacy of the US air and naval forces. In any case, where in the US would foreign invaders strike first?
Yo, honestly, I didn't even, like, I actually think it's impossible to invade America, bro. Like, how are you gonna do it? You gotta go by sea? America's just gonna dominate in sea. You get onto their land, they're just gonna kick you off. Like, bro, the only way possible would literally be nukes. The only way possible, bro. And yet they got nukes themselves, so like,
An amphibious assault against the US would most likely come from the west coast, as the east coast is more heavily defended given the many major military installations and shipyards spread over its length. Of course, the west coast has a large military presence as well, so it's only a slightly better choice. Wherever they landed, enemy troops would seek to quickly capture as many deep-water ports as they could. The US beaches, by and large, are not consistently fortified against amphibious invasions, so if surprise is achieved, enemy forces could be rolling down Hollywood Boulevard before you could blink. The capture—
Yeah, but how are they gonna get there? They're gonna know they're coming by ships, and then their ships are gone. Like, how are they even gonna get to the point where they touch base, where they touch down land?
of ports such as Los Angeles, Long Beach, Oakland, Tacoma, and Seattle would be absolutely crucial to maintaining a strong supply line as the invasion moved into the interior. That would be the first priority. Once the invaders could get supplies ashore, they would need to be able to move them. To do so, they would probably capture as many warehouses, armories, logistics, fuel, and railroad centers as they possibly can.
Okay.
Not only would this ensure supplies for their own armies, but it would deny resources for the US forces. It's possible for them to bring their own supply vehicles, but an amphibious invasion as daring as this would need to move quickly and not be over-encumbered with massive trucks. At least not in the first wave.
How are they getting these
Once
here?
a beachhead and base of supply are established, the troops could then move inland to take out strongholds and encircle large cities.
Hold on, you missed something, pal. You missed something. Let's say they were able to touch land, and they're here. You're forgetting about the US's civilians, buddy. They all have, not all of them, but they have guns, bro. You're gonna have to fight the civilians. They're gonna be in the house, bro. Take it up. Oh, yo. I know for a fact there's so many people that's gonna want to, like, be main character. And try that. Look, bro. They're definitely gonna want to defend. I'm telling you right now. They're not just gonna give up. I'm telling you that right now.
As footholds are established, the great push into the interior would commence and would be a slugfest. Driving eastward would be a true challenge, but considerably easier than successfully landing an amphibious assault force. Once the tanks hit the highway of the Great Plains, who knows how far they could reach before they could be stopped. The goal here is absolute surprise, confusion, and fear. If the invading forces can achieve those things and establish a foothold before the US can adequately respond, then they might be in deep trouble.
That's just not gonna happen.
But let's be clear, this is an extremely optimistic view, in which many factors would have to go the invaders' way for any hope of success.
True. This is a very optimistic view. Let's just say America were caught off guard. They did the crazy surprise attack. Everything went in their favor. I just don't see it happening, I ain't gonna lie. It'd be interesting to see what you guys have to say about it.
So let's look at what factors would deter the success of an invading force.
Okay.
First up is geography. The US has built-in moats around it. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans act as a natural defense barrier against any potential invaders. For centuries, these oceans have deterred would-be enemies from even thinking about invading, just due to the logistical challenges of getting that much men and material in place and across the water. Even today, launching amphibious invasions is a massive undertaking, even for advanced and wealthy nations. So the list of who could possibly pull this off is pretty small. As previously mentioned, the most likely spot for an invasion would come from the west coast, as the east coast is more heavily defended and the southern route through the Gulf of Mexico would have invading forces surrounded on 3 sides by American air and naval bases. Not to mention that this area of the country has the potential for devastating hurricanes half of the year.
Oh, imagine that. Imagine you're trying to invade America, bro, from this part, and tornadoes is just destroying your ships. Yo.
Exactly ideal conditions for thousands of men sitting on boats. Ask the Mongols how that one turned out when they tried to invade Japan. Once inland
What, did they get swept away by a tornado? Oh, crazy.
Geography is still on the side of the defenders. The United States has everything from deserts to high mountain ranges to lowland swamps. This variety in terrain is an attacker's nightmare, as this will require a diverse set of equipment and skills to overcome each one. That being said, if the invading troops were to get a foothold in the mountains, getting them out would be very tough. However, if the invading troops outpaced their supply lines at the wrong time of year, they could find themselves not prepared for the weather, and Mother Nature has no mercy.
Uh-oh.
Desert warfare is extremely different from fighting in the alpine climate of the Rockies or down in the muggy, oppressive heat of the South. So if the Chinese or Russians wanted to take the US, they would need highly trained, conditioned, and well-supplied troops to be able to maintain their high-speed offensive. If they don't, they risk getting bogged down in a protracted war. Guerrilla forces have utilized terrain to their advantage since time immemorial, and it would be no different in the US. Have you ever driven through the backroads of West Virginia or the swamps of Louisiana?
No, but I wish I have.
So as you can see, geography plays a massive role in the outcome of an invasion for both the attacker and the defender. Now we have to acknowledge that there are other ways into the US. What if the attackers don't attack either coast? If somehow Canada or Mexico agree to let invading forces use—
This is what I've said before. I can't see America being invaded, right? It'd be way too hard.
either coast. If somehow Canada or Mexico—
But if Canada or Mexico agreed to invade America as well, and they set up base here, and they go in from either Canada or Mexico, it'll be a much tougher game. It'll be a much, not saying it's going to be possible, but it'll be a much tougher game. You know what I mean?
agree to let invading forces use their border with the US, that could potentially cause major problems.
Right, yeah.
Now, this might
sure.
seem outlandish, but stranger things have happened. Mexico or Canada could be coerced or bribed into this, but if they did, it would surely end badly. Although a land invasion is a lot simpler and quicker than an amphibious one, supply would still be an issue. The Canadian or Mexican ports of supply would surely be the first targets for US air power and are well within striking distance. So
Right,
again,
true.
the key issue to this whole
True.
thing is the ability to supply the invasion and maintain that supply. If the initial shock and awe didn't take out US air superiority, then the invading forces better be able to defend their supply depots. The US-Canadian border has a relative—
The thing is, that won't happen either. Because let's say like Canada and Mexico did agree. They'll be too scared. If their invasion failed, they would then be taken over. You know what I mean? They're just going to unleash hell on themselves. And I'm telling you right now, America can unleash more hell land-wise when they don't have to use ships to take all their stuff. Like America does massive damage across seas. Never mind when they're just next door, land. Bro, I can't imagine that. That would be crazy.
then the invading forces better be able to defend their supply depots. The US-Canadian border has a relatively low number of crossings fit for military vehicles, so the invasion would either be spread out or bottlenecked.
Right.
If you look up the Highway of Death, you'll see how exactly the US deals with tightly grouped military vehicle columns. The
Oh,
border has
wow.
somewhat low security, but is still actively monitored and patrolled by US law enforcement. The US-Mexico border is much more highly controlled and regulated. People still get through illegally, but if thousands of troops began massing in either country, it's reasonable to assume that US intelligence would notice.
Yeah, sure.
The good news is that both Canada and Mexico are on good terms with the US, and all parties profit immensely from trade. That brings us to the next factor that can make or break an invasion: technology. Remember when we talked about
True.
secrecy being a key to this whole thing? For any invasion of the US, the invaders would have to be able to mass their troops and supplies and move them into position in absolute secrecy. Lucky for the US, they have satellite programs that are highly advanced and critical for national defense. They can be used to detect and track troop movement, which would give US
Wow.
intelligence plenty of advanced warning if foreign armies were amassing troops and military equipment. They even have
would
something
know.
called the Defense Support Program, or DSP, operated by the US Space Force. These satellites
up?
are a vital early warning system for national defense, operating in 22,300-mile geosynchronous orbits. They can
I have no clue what he just said. He just said so many words, bro, letters. But do you know what? I'm looking at this picture right here, and what I'm seeing is, give it some time, and they're going to attach a laser onto this bad boy, bro. They're going to have a satellite laser, and anybody messing with them, they're just going to send the laser down, boom, and it's just going to be, yo. You know, like the Death Destroyer in Star Wars? It's going to be that, but on a smaller scale, because obviously we don't want to blow up, destroy the whole entire planet, right? But, crazy, bro. Technology is going to be crazy in the future.
by the US Space Force. These satellites are a vital early warning system for national defense, operating in 22,300-mile geosynchronous orbits.
Okay.
They can detect missile launches, space launches, and nuclear detonations.
Oh, wow.
In addition to satellite technology, the US military also has tremendous resources when it comes to radar and drones as well. For example, the US Navy has its own system known as ROTHR, or Relocatable Over-the-Horizon Radar. It can cover all of Central America, the Caribbean, and a large part of South America. Any direction an enemy force approaches from, if the radar is operational, there's eyes on them. The US drone industry used the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan as its test laboratory, greatly expanding its capabilities. The primary function has always been intelligence gathering and surveillance, and that function continues to grow with each passing year. This is all to say that the US intelligence and early warning capabilities are incredibly complex and cover all areas around the borders of the United States. For any invader to even have the faintest hope of success, they would need to play a little dirty. Let's look at our next factor, unorthodox methods of attack. Warfare is getting more complicated. No one can disagree with that. It used to consist of two groups stabbing each other with metal blades, and now countries fight proxy wars in remote corners of the globe to control the flow of resources to manufacturers and consumers, all while maintaining their status on the world stage. To fight these ever-changing battles, new weapons are required. One of the greatest dangers in the years to come will be cyber attacks. These attacks can cripple government and private computer systems, cut internet access, disable water and electrical plants, and even scramble GPS systems to massive vehicles like oil tankers. There are a million use cases, but according to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the main goal of cyber warfare is to weaken, disrupt, or destroy another nation. Deception in warfare is nothing new. In fact, it's one of the most critical aspects of it. The Allies would have been thrown back into the sea at Normandy if they hadn't employed a complicated deception against the Germans and convinced them the actual invasion was going to occur at a place called Pas de Calais up the coast. This deception stalled Hitler from committing his panzer reserves and allowed the Allies the time they needed to establish a beachhead and take the fight to the Germans. So if an invading army wanted to approach the United States in secret, they would surely have to employ some level of cyber attacks to give themselves a chance. Another unorthodox method of attack could—
that would be China, bro. I feel like if anyone's gonna do some crazy cyber warfare, it'll be China doing that.
Could come in the form of an EMP. This stands for electromagnetic pulse and is essentially a brief burst of electromagnetic energy. These have been weaponized and could be attached to missiles or other similar methods of delivery. Once detonated, these EMPs would overload and shut down the electrical grids, while also degrading or destroying all kinds of technology. This could include everything from cell phones to car engines to generators. An EMP—
Wait, even car engines? Is that if it's an electric car? Or would that even destroy car engines when it's fueled by gas?
Everything from cell phones to car engines to generators. An EMP is a quick and easy way to take an opponent's technological advantage and roll back the clock to before the Industrial Revolution. So while America was blind and deaf to the outside world, trying to figure out what happened, an invading army could use the chaos as the perfect opportunity to strike.
That's scary, man.
Technology aside, another more practical method of softening up an area for invasion is good old-fashioned military sabotage. It's not a secret that US air and naval power are second to none. So if an invading force wanted to level the playing field, they would embed agents who would conduct coordinated strikes against US air and naval facilities in the hours before the invasion was to begin.
Like spies?
Now, I know what you're thinking. Those facilities have extreme levels of security, and you are correct, but that doesn't mean they're impenetrable. Here's another example from Normandy. The French resistance was crucial to the success of the invasion. Without the efforts to sabotage German rail and communication networks, the whole offensive could have collapsed. Some level of military sabotage could be one of the deciding factors in the outcome of a potential invasion. As Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, there is no greater danger than underestimating your opponent. In terms of battlefield tactics, it doesn't get more simple or tried and true than divide and conquer. In this modern era of proxy wars and cyber attacks, the weapons of war are changing all the time.
Sure.
With every new invention, there is a brief period when people use it for good and the overall betterment of the human race, but inevitably it becomes weaponized.
Right.
As an example, the first flight was in 1903, and by 1911, planes were being used as weapons. In August of 19...
Yo, am I tripping with this? That's so correct though. Didn't the person that created the drone, wasn't he like really annoyed that people started using it in the military? I'm pretty sure I've seen a story on that. So the person that created the drone created it for photos and stuff. And then he found out that the US military was using it for the military. And I can't remember what he did, but I just remember him being very, very annoyed. But then again, I think they was like buying his drone or something. I'm not too sure. But then again, what do you expect? You know what I mean? Bro, of course drones are going to be used in.
But inevitably it becomes weaponized. As an example, the first flight was in 1903, and by 1911, planes were being used as weapons. In August of 1945, 2 atomic bombs were dropped on Japan from a heavy bomber plane. From the first flight to dropping bombs capable of decimating cities, it only took 42 years. It's no surprise that the internet, for all of its positives, has the potential to become a weapon. Spreading misinformation or outright propaganda can effectively divide a population and cause conflicts between family members and friends.
Right.
A foreign power could weaponize the internet with the intent of sowing incredible amounts of division within the United States. A divided and weak country that doesn't know what to believe would be much easier to conquer than one that is united and strong.
That is
now,
true.
all of this talk of sabotage and cyber attacks assumes that the invading force wants to subdue the US and conquer it to govern. What if their intentions are more malicious than that? What if they just want to burn it all down and govern the ashes? Biological warfare is a nightmare scenario for the world and hopefully never really happens.
Okay, yeah. Let's not even get into this one. This one would be the scariest, actually. Biological warfare. Like, bro, look, for example, look at COVID, man. We got locked down. It was scary, bro. Spread it everywhere. Yo. That, imagine like biologically creating something that just kills you instantly. Bro.
What if they just want to burn it all down and govern the ashes? Biological warfare is a nightmare scenario for the world and hopefully never really happens.
Really is.
According to the WHO, biological and toxin weapons are either microorganisms like virus, bacteria, or fungi, or toxic substances produced by living organisms that are produced and released deliberately to cause disease and death in humans, animals, or plants. Weaponizing anthrax, the plague, or something similar would cause untold amounts of death and suffering to all of North America.
Wow.
Diseases don't care about borders. Let's hope no country is that evil to inflict this degree of suffering on their fellow man.
Yo, that's what I'm saying, bro. Like, if you did this, you would never know, like, it could just come back on you. Like, it would just spread around the world, you know what I mean? Like, people, unless you was gonna do that and then lock down your country fully, but then again, like, it still might get in. Do you know what I mean? Bro, it don't care for borders. Yeah, that'd be scary, man.
Following this deadly progression, then you have nuclear weapons.
Right,
if a foreign power truly
Scary
has
as well.
no regard for the consequences of its actions, then it could consider using nuclear arms as a method of clearing out resistance in
Very
the US.
scary.
Again, all it would achieve would be governing decimated land and radiated bones. Not exactly ideal, but if someone wanted to do to the US what the Romans did to Carthage, this would be the most efficient way in today's technology. But perhaps the most important factor in all of this is the United States military itself. The US military is one of the most advanced, highly trained, and equipped militaries in the world, and can seriously throw its weight around when it feels like it.
Right.
As it currently stands, there are over 750 US military bases around the world.
Wow.
The global presence of the US cannot be understated, but it also has between 450 to 500 bases or locations in the US itself.
Okay.
US air and naval power would be crucial in the opening stages of an amphibious invasion. So protecting those resources and keeping them ready to fight at any given moment is a high priority for US defense planners. With around 1.4 million active duty service members, the US is currently the third largest military in the world. Any invasion of the United States would have to deal with a large number of active duty troops in the country, as well as about 450,000 National Guard members who can be called up at any moment. A key factor would be how effectively the US could bring back troops from bases all over the world to fight to defend their homeland.
True. Wait, what's a National Guard member? What's that?
In comparison, China has over 2 million active duty soldiers with many more in reserve.
Wow.
Russia has around 2.2 million service members with their numbers in constant fluctuation due to the ongoing fighting in Ukraine.
Okay, sure.
The rising casualties have made the Russians conscript a lot of their citizens who otherwise would not be in the military. Their level of training, the equipment they carry, and their battlefield effectiveness vary greatly between the different units.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Like, you know how we're showing the numbers? So the 2.2, 2.4, then America's with a 1.6. America, they're all well-trained. You know what I'm saying? Well-trained. A lot of them are experienced. And like, as it's saying with Russia and Ukraine, they showed that they're not well-trained, not all of them, not well-experienced, right? And yeah, that's why America's just so powerful, dude. They got 1.6 and they are very well-trained.
In terms of a land battle on the numbers alone, this should be a pretty close fight where the US has the advantage with its Navy. The US Navy is widely considered to be the best and most powerful in the world. Its mix of warships, submarines, and an intimidating carrier fleet make it a formidable opponent. The US Navy's global presence and the firepower it can bring to the fight are an incredible deterrent to would-be enemies. That's really bad news for anyone trying to stage, launch, and execute an amphibious invasion. As President Teddy Roosevelt once said, "A good navy is not a provocation to war, it is the surest guarantee of peace." In addition to the active duty and National Guard units, the US has an advantage that the other countries simply don't have. The citizens of the US are the most well-armed country in the world.
This is what I'm saying, bro. You're gonna have to fight them as well. Yo, I talk to you guys all the time, especially on like my streams and stuff on Twitch. Bro, I know you guys will not be giving your country up. I know that for a fact.
It's estimated that there are around 390 million guns in the US currently.
Wow.
That's around 120 guns per 100 people. As I'm sure you're aware, everyone today has an opinion on gun ownership, and they are entitled to it, but in the event of a full-scale invasion by a foreign power, they might come in handy. It's almost a surefire thing that if given the chance, militias of well-armed US citizens could rise up and conduct guerrilla warfare operations against the invaders.
True.
Although it is unverified that Admiral Yamamoto of the Japanese Empire reportedly said, "We can never invade America. There would be a rifle behind every blade of grass." While he may never
yeah, that's the thing, bro. How you gonna invade the country when you don't know where you can walk? Because you could just walk in a random grass, like a random patch of grass, bro. And then there's a farmer there with a machine gun, right? Spraying it, you know what I mean? Get off his land, spraying it. Bro, you'd have, it just won't be able to happen, man. It just won't be able to happen. You'll be on edge everywhere you go. You're fighting the military, you're fighting the civilians. Nah, it's not gonna happen, bro. Yeah, the US military is what, 1.6 million? Mate, you're gonna be fighting 300 million people if you invade them. Oh, I'd be mad.
America, there would be a rifle behind every blade of grass.
Yep.
While he may never have said this quote, it undoubtedly rings true.
Right.
If we look at recent examples of combat for how each nation fared, we can get a rough idea of how this might play out. Let's start with the US. Having fought essentially continuous wars for over a century, the US military is a juggernaut of practical combat experience. The past 20 years alone have seen the US fight 2 wars, and although you can't say they won clear-cut victories in either one, the battlefield experience gained there for everyone from the generals at the Pentagon down to the riflemen guarding the street corner will serve the US going forward for decades to come.
Right.
The weapons technology in those wars has been tested and refined through the high-stakes trial and error that is combat.
What is
It's
that?
no secret that the US is the premier weapons manufacturer in the world. After finally leaving Afghanistan in 2021, which was a disaster, the US military is going through a phase similar to what happened after Vietnam. It's downsizing and rearming. This level of experience stands in stark contrast to that of China. They have not fought an actual war since 1979 when they fought Vietnam over Vietnam's conflict with Cambodia. The war lasted about a month and saw no clear winner. So even if any of the men who fought in that war are still alive, it was 45 years ago as of 2024, and they would be a little on the older side. That means that all the enlisted men, junior officers, and a good amount of the senior officers have no actual combat experience. That is a major disadvantage for any army going into war.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Until the bullets start flying, we have no idea how the Chinese military will actually react.
Right.
The Russian military has fought multiple regional conflicts since the fall of the Soviet Union, most notably against Chechnya, Dagestan, and Georgia. Those were smaller in scale and against comparatively inferior forces. It wasn't until the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022 that the Russian military had its mettle tested properly. And unless you've been hiding under a rock, you probably heard something of what's happening in Ukraine. During the first days of the invasion, Russia initially swept deep into the Ukrainian defenses, causing massive breakthroughs with their superior armor.
Yeah, bro, I literally remember like the first week of this. Man, it was scary, bro. People were saying World War III. Don't know what's going to happen. They're going to take Ukraine and then just keep going. Bro, it's scary, man. Is this still ongoing now? I know, like, Ukraine are, like, fighting off very, very well. Literally, you pushed them back. Is this... I've not really heard much of it. I'm not going to lie.
To the Ukrainian defenses, causing massive breakthroughs with their superior armor. The Ukrainians stood their ground, however, with a little help from Western weapons, and pushed the Russians back to a stalemate. Both sides have dug in, and the territorial gains are minimal now, but casualty figures keep climbing. The Russians continue to bombard Ukrainian cities, while Ukraine uses drones to target Russian ships and infrastructure. This is the largest and most destructive conflict Europe has seen since World War II. And as of the production of this video, it doesn't seem like it will end anytime soon.
Oh, okay, so it's still ongoing. Wow. Oh, wow.
The production of this video, it doesn't seem like it will end anytime soon. The Russian military has had some successes, but has also struggled more than most people would have guessed. Civil unrest due to conscription orders and the wars on popularity are making the Russian home front increasingly turbulent. Have the ghosts of 1917 returned? The parallels are too eerie to be dismissed. Stalemates, trench warfare, civil unrest, and an oppressive government that will do anything to remain in power.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I agree with him there, bro. Like, people are surprised at how that's gone because anyone would have thought Russia invading Ukraine, they would have taken Ukraine. With their numbers, their stats, the weapons they got, the personnel they got. And the fact it's been a couple years, and I don't know how far they've got in or whatever, and Ukraine are fine as well as they are. Yeah, they got Western weapons and stuff like that, bro. So just imagine them trying their luck with America, bro. Oh, yeah. Nah. In no way.
The only thing you're missing is a drunken and mystical holy man named Rasputin. Only time will tell if things go the same route as they did in 1917, but one thing is certain, a lot more blood will be spilled whichever way the chips fall.
Right.
Of course, all of this is speculative, so no one can say with absolute certainty how an invasion of the United States would go. That's the thing about warfare. The victors usually do something bold or unexpected. As it stands, the US is one of the most secure countries on Earth. Its geographical advantages, such as two massive oceans on either side of it, insulate it from traditional ground invasions and make an amphibious invasion one of the few viable options available to would-be invaders. Amphibious invasions are incredibly hard to pull off successfully. Even with the technology we have at our disposal today, an invasion force still has to get their troops together in position and onto the beaches. As we learned with Normandy, surprise and deception play a large role in the outcome of such invasions. However, the Axis didn't have spy satellites or drones watching every move the Allies made. The role technology plays in warfare today cannot be understated and is growing at an unprecedented pace.
Yo, with technology the way it's going, bro, I'm telling you, man, give it like 10, 20 more years, there's going to be Terminators running around everywhere, man. I don't want to be involved in this, dude. It's literally just going to be Terminators attacking each other.
For an invader
Hell
to
no.
have a chance, they would have to disrupt or disable the US's intelligence and technological capabilities before they hit the beaches. If they can't keep the US in the dark, they will struggle mightily to fight off US air and naval power.
Oh, for sure.
That being said, there are a few options they have for softening up the landing zones and country beyond. Some are more malicious than others. Cyber attacks and EMPs can disable technology in the blink of an eye and cause mass chaos and confusion.
Right.
Such a move would undoubtedly give the attackers a clear-cut advantage in reconnaissance, communications, and high-tech weapons systems. If they go another route, such as using biological warfare, social subversion, or even nuclear weapons, things can get real ugly real quick.
We don't want any of them.
Nothing pulls people together quicker than a crisis, though, and the appearance of a terrifying common enemy might be just enough to have Americans set aside their differences and take up arms together to defend their families and homes.
Oh, they would.
It's this unity that will allow America to prosper in the face of conflict. And this perhaps reveals who is most likely to be able to destroy America. America itself. This quote from Abraham Lincoln has—
Yo, that is true, though. I don't see anyone else destroying America, bro, unless you, like, bring it to nukes and biological. But it's just not happening because if, let's say they got invaded, ain't no way the civilians, bro, are just gonna go without a fight. They're gonna protect their families, their places, their homes, you know what I mean? They're just not.
Has the same profound importance today as when it was first said. Shall we expect some transatlantic military giant to step the ocean and crush us at a blow? Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined, with all the treasure of the earth, our own excepted, in their military chest, with a Bonaparte for a commander, could not by force take a drink from the Ohio or make a track on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years.
Oh, wow.
At what point, then, is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide. It should be clear to everyone watching that any type of—
Is he basically just said, we shall never let anyone else destroy us, but if we're going to destroy ourselves, make sure it's going to be yourselves. What?
And finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide. It should be clear to everyone watching that any type of war between the world's top 3 militaries or an invasion of the US would end in unmitigated disaster and death for millions, possibly even billions.
It would be bad.
If you like this video, now watch why the—
Crazy, but that was a really good video. Enjoyed that. Very interested to see what would happen. Can't wait to see what you guys have to say in the comment section. Don't think America's getting invaded anytime soon. No one's crazy enough, I'm not gonna lie. But really good video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe for more content. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/L3WG. If you guys want to check me out over there, I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.